Charles Manson, his name is synonymous with manipulation, terror, and the darkest depths of human depravity. As the enigmatic leader of the infamous Manson family, Manson masterminded a series of brutal murders in 1969, shocking the nation and leaving a permanent scar on American history. Among these atrocities was the chilling murder of actress Sharon Tate, a crime so gruesome it continues to haunt the public consciousness. This is the story of how one man turned his delusions into deadly commands, using charisma, manipulation, and fear to orchestrate one of the most infamous murder sprees in history. Charles Mills Manson was born on November 12, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio, to a 16-year-old mother. His early life was turbulent, marred by neglect, abuse, and instability. Manson bounced between relatives and reform schools, spending much of his youth in and out of detention centers for petty crimes. By his early 20s, Manson was already a hardened criminal, yet beneath his troubled exterior, he possessed an uncanny ability to manipulate those around him. Charismatic and calculating, Manson learned to exploit people's vulnerabilities, a skill that would later become the foundation of his cult leadership. In the late 1960s, Manson moved to California during the height of the counterculture movement. There, he attracted a following of disillusioned young men and women, many of whom were searching for meaning in a world of upheaval. Manson promised them enlightenment, community, and freedom, but what he offered was control and chaos. The group settled at the Spahn Ranch, a dilapidated property outside Los Angeles. Under Manson's influence, the followers, who referred to themselves as the family, relinquished their identities and obeyed his every command. Manson presented himself as a prophet, blending pseudo-religious rhetoric with apocalyptic visions, and including his infamous theory of helter-skelter. Manson claimed that an impending race war would destroy society. He called this prophecy helter-skelter, borrowing the term from a Beatles song. In his twisted vision, the Manson family would survive the apocalypse by hiding in the desert and eventually emerge to rule the world. But Manson grew impatient, waiting for the prophecy to fulfill itself. In the summer of 1969, he decided to spark the race war himself by orchestrating murders designed to frame African Americans. The stage was set for a series of crimes that would forever define Manson and his followers. On the night of August 8, 1969, Manson ordered 4 of his followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to a home on Cielo Drive in Los Angeles. Their target, the residence of actress Sharon Tate and her husband, director Roman Polanski. Polanski was away, but Tate, 8 months pregnant, was hosting friends. Armed with knives and a .22 caliber revolver, the group invaded the property, cutting the phone lines to prevent calls for help. Inside the house were Sharon Tate, hairstylist Jay Sebring, heiress Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, and a young man named Stephen Parent, who was visiting the caretaker. The violence that followed was unthinkable. Tex Watson shot Stephen Parent as he tried to leave. Inside the house, the others were terrorized, bound, and brutally murdered. Sharon Tate pleaded for her unborn child's life, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. She was stabbed 16 times. Her blood used to write the word pig on the front door, a macabre signature of the Manson family. The very next night, Manson and 6 followers targeted the home of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, a wealthy couple in Los Angeles. This time, Manson himself entered the house to tie up the victims, ensuring they wouldn't escape, before leaving the rest to his followers. Leno LaBianca was stabbed 12 times, with a carving fork left embedded in his stomach. The word war was scrawled on his abdomen. Rosemary was stabbed 41 times, The killers used the victims' blood to write phrases like "death to pigs" and "helter skelter," a misspelled version of Manson's prophecy, on the walls. For weeks, Los Angeles was gripped by fear. The murders appeared senseless, and the police were left with little evidence to connect the crimes. But the case took a turn when Susan Atkins, arrested for an unrelated crime, bragged to her cellmate about her involvement in the Tate murders. Her confession led to the arrest of Manson and several followers. The trial that followed became a media circus. Manson, with his wild eyes and unkempt appearance, carved an X into his forehead, later altering it to a swastika. His behavior in court was erratic and chilling, interrupting proceedings, making bizarre statements, and attempting to intimidate witnesses and jurors. On January 25, 1971, Charles Manson and 4 of his followers were convicted of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They were sentenced to death, though their sentences were later commuted to life in prison when California abolished the death penalty. During the sentencing, Manson showed no remorse, stating, "Oh, you people have created the monster you fear. I am only what you made me." After his sentencing, Charles Manson was sent to Corcoran State Prison in California, where he would spend the remainder of his life. Even behind bars, Manson retained a disturbing level of influence. Letters and visits from devoted admirers poured in, some of whom claimed to still view him as a prophet or messiah. In prison, Manson continued to project an image of defiance. He carved a swastika into his forehead, further solidifying his image as a symbol of hate and chaos. His erratic behavior persisted. Manson often gave rambling interviews filled with cryptic statements, incoherent philosophies, and occasional outbursts of rage. Despite his imprisonment, the fear of Manson and his cult lingered in the public psyche. Many questioned how one man could wield such control over others, convincing them to commit unspeakable atrocities. The members of the Manson family, once a tight-knit group of devoted followers, faced their own fates in prison. Some expressed remorse for their actions, while others, like Susan Atkins, remained loyal to Manson's twisted ideology for years. Tex Watson became a born-again Christian, and Patricia Krenwinkel devoted herself to religious studies. Though these changes did little to erase the horrors of their crimes, Linda Kasabian, the family member who served as a lookout during the Tate murders, testified against Manson and his followers in exchange for immunity. Her testimony was instrumental in securing the convictions, but it also marked her as a traitor in the eyes of the remaining loyal family members. Charles Manson's ability to manipulate others was at the core of his infamy. Psychologists have studied his behavior, often pointing to his childhood of neglect and abandonment as factors that shaped his personality. Manson's charisma, coupled with his ability to exploit the insecurities and vulnerabilities of his followers, made him uniquely dangerous. Manson used music as a tool of manipulation, blending his ambitions of becoming a rock star with his cult teachings. He convinced his followers that songs like Helter Skelter by the Beatles contained hidden messages meant specifically for them. He created a narrative in which he was the chosen leader of a divine mission, promising his followers they would be spared from the chaos he believed was coming. The Tate LaBianca murders marked the end of the 1960s counterculture movement, shattering the utopian ideals of peace and love that had defined the era. The Manson family's crimes were a wake-up call to America, revealing how easily vulnerable individuals could be manipulated into committing unspeakable acts. Books, films, and documentaries about Manson and his cult have kept the story alive for decades. Manson became an enduring symbol of evil, representing the dark side of charisma and the dangers of blind devotion. His face, often seen in chilling photographs with his wild eyes and cryptic smile, remains one of the most infamous images in American history. As the years passed, Charles Manson's influence began to fade. While he still attracted occasional attention through interviews or bizarre behavior, the world moved on. Manson's health deteriorated, and he spent his final years in and out of prison hospitals. On November 19, 2017, Charles Manson died of natural causes at the age of 83. His death brought closure to one of the most infamous chapters in American criminal history, though the wounds left by his actions continue to haunt the families of his victims. While much attention has been focused on Manson and his followers, it's crucial to remember the lives lost in the Tate-LaBianca murders. Sharon Tate was a rising star, a young actress full of promise and love, whose life was cut short just weeks before she was to become a mother. Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, Leno LaBianca, and Rosemary LaBianca were all individuals with hopes, dreams, and families whose lives were stolen by the Manson family's senseless violence. The enduring pain of these crimes serves as a reminder of the human cost of Manson's manipulation and delusions. Charles Manson's story is one of darkness, manipulation, and the terrifying power of charisma. He turned vulnerable individuals into killers, weaving his delusions into a deadly reality that left an indelible mark on history. Manson's name remains infamous, not just for the crimes he orchestrated, but for the fear and chaos he unleashed. His life and actions serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of blind loyalty and the capacity for evil that can hide behind a charming facade. What do you think about Charles Manson's story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories.